Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin, how are you, sir?
Good evening, Bryant.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Glad that you're here and all is well after your little procedure there that you had done.
Yes, sir.
In the medical world, that's all I'll mention. If you want to talk about it, you can do that. But anyway, glad it all went well. Boy, I sort of put that right out there, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. I was trying to keep that a secret. No.
No.
I will give a short brief, and this is all that I'll say is, we've talked about it on the podcast before,
right.
but that PFO, right, that hole in my heart that I had, right. I'm speaking past tense now. I no longer have that. It's been patched.
Right.
So we're good to go. Everything went well, and looking forward from here.
Wonderful.
No more issues.
All right. I had a new thought that I've not actually considered until today when I heard the intro again this time.
Right.
And it says, we're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. When you first met me, you were thinking, wow, he is kind of, I can't really think of anything wrong with him. Can you?
Yeah, but I was looking at your beard thinking, well, that's a good start.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, I'm excited about tonight. We have a very, very special guest. All guests are special. Some are more special than others. And we are honored to have Vince Patton on as our guest tonight. And I'm going to take a minute. Vince, welcome, by the way. So thrilled that you're here. Thanks for giving us your time and your talents and your stories, which are always wonderful to hear. But let me tell you a little bit about Vince before we get going. 4 words that I'll start out with: friend, colleague, leader, servant. Those actually, I think, encapsulate, in my view, the life of Vince Patton. I've known him for over 25 years. I think I knew who he was before I actually knew him. We got to know each other in terms of just more of a personal relationship on Governor's Island back in the early 90s when you were there together. His life accomplishments are many and varied. I could take, the first half hour of the podcast talking about those, but I won't. I'll just hit some really highlights. Probably most significantly, maybe not most significant, very significantly, he's a retired Coastie. Semper Paratus, Vince. Thanks
Absolutely.
for that. Yeah. And Vince, he actually had a remarkable Coast Guard career, and there's lots out there on the internet that you can find about it, but he rose to the highest rank that you can rise to. He was the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, worked with Admiral Jim Loy, who was the Commandant at the time, and the two of them were the dynamic duo leading the service through thick and thin, through all kinds of crazy stuff. That was an amazing time. He's one of my sea daddies, maybe my primary sea daddy, somebody that was up there looking out for the young and up-and-coming officer trying to make good, and he kept me out of trouble just like he did a whole bunch of other people. He's a reverend. He is a doctor, Dr. Patton, Doctor of Education from American University, which is no slouch place to get your degree from. And then significantly, most recently, selected to be the Grand Marshal of the New York City Veterans Day Parade on 11th of November. Oh, my goodness.
That's outstanding.
That is a big deal. And there's only one of those per year, and they're usually picking the top of the top. There you are, Vince.
I am. It's awesome.
Yeah. So let me just start out. Let me get this thing flowing by asking this question. You have And you have so many awards and such an interesting background. And Brian and I were talking about it before we started recording, but you have lived a life that is truly unusual. When I say that, I mean truly extraordinary. So let me ask you this. What is it about you? What is it about your mentality? What is it about the way you sort of approach life and approach the world that you would say has enabled you to be the person that you are and have these incredible accomplishments in your wake that you have accomplished?
Well, first off, I want to say to both you gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun, and I love talking about things. It's not as much about talking about myself, but the things that I love to talk about. And to get to your answer, Kevin, is more of kind of what makes me tick.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the first thing about it is that I'm no different than anybody else. I mean, really, grew up in Detroit, Michigan. From a family of 10 kids. I'm the fifth child, third boy, and we all amazingly did wonderful. Growing up in inner city Detroit, and we didn't have an awful lot, but it took me years to realize I didn't have a lot. I always thought I had a lot, but I will tell you that for me, my success had everything to do with a lot of people, from my parents, my siblings, close friends, and so forth, that I will never forget that I didn't get to where I got to by myself. And that's really what started. And here's an interesting part of me, just say that, that, hey, everything wasn't handed to me on a platter. I told you my humble beginnings, but something that's a little unusual to some people to know, except for people who I grew up with, I was a habitual stutterer. In fact, you couldn't get maybe 3 sentences out of me without stuttering or stammering through it and so forth. And
Wow.
and I conquered it, and I conquered it because I wanted to. And it all started with I came home from school one day. I was in the 5th grade. I came home from school with a permission slip to put me into a special class for speech therapy. My father said he wasn't going to sign it, and my mother said, "You got to, we got to do this. His stuttering is really bad." And my father said, "I want you to sing the national anthem." That was the first thing he said, and I had no idea why he asked me to do that. Here I am, and I'm about 9 years old, 9 going on 10 at the time. Sing the national anthem. Okay, so I sung the national anthem, and he said, "Guess what? You didn't stutter the whole time you sung that. So when you come home from school every day, I want you to go out there in the backyard and sing at the top of your lungs the national anthem." And then that soon went on to reading things out of a magazine or the newspaper, to singing Motown songs. And all it did was give me confidence.
Wow.
And I licked the problem.
Wow.
I mean,
That's very cool.
That was kind of the start for me in terms of that level of success, and how, it was my father that sort of got me going.
Made you realize you could do it.
The mind is a powerful
it
thing.
really is. And he planted that seed in you, and it just sort of grew. I love that story. That actually reminds me of a story. I think it's in Think and Grow Rich. Was written by, was it written Dale Carnegie?
Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill. Yeah, thank you. Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, that's right. I got the book.
Okay. But he's talking about his son. His son was born without ears. No like ear canals, no nothing. And he through his childhood convinced him that one day, one way, somehow he was going to be able to hear. And he found out that his son could actually sort of hear by putting his teeth on the record player and feel the beat. And that somehow conducted sound into his brain, and that led to long and very interesting story. But he ended up hearing, and was the beginning of cochlear implants and all kind of crazy stuff. Your father did that for you. I didn't mean to divert there. Your father planted that seed. And the thing is, if you're looking at your life and you're looking back at it, a lot of people go, well, it seems like it was easy. That just sort of seems like it all came to him. It ain't easy.
No.
It wasn't instant. It was hard. So talk about that, because you got knocked down a few times. Plus, you were serving, the Coast Guard at that time was a very white organization. And obviously you are an African American, and that's amazing. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, like I said, growing up in inner city Detroit, and the black kid that from extreme humble beginnings, and when I made the decision to go in the Coast Guard, it's probably a little longer story than that. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you the story. I think it's
Okay.
important. And in order to answer that question, I got to tell you this story. So when I tell you about it was people, and I talked about my parents, and now let me talk about one of my siblings, my oldest brother, who's 8 years older than I am. In fact, he went off into the Navy right after high school. So when he went in the Navy, he was 18 and I'm 10. So he's sending me home all of these pictures of what he's doing in the Navy. And I just get excited about it. I'm going to join the Navy. I could see myself doing the kinds of things that he was doing. He was an aviation electrician's mate. He later went on to officer candidate school and became an officer. And he retired from the Navy as a captain, an '06 captain. But anyway, he's sending me home all of these pictures, and I wanted to do what my brother Greg did. I wanted to go into the Navy. So that's all I talked about. That's all I wanted to do. And on my 17th birthday, I'm a senior in high school. And my parents, knowing this is all I wanted to do, and I kept up my grades in school and so forth, they came to me on my 17th birthday and said, we're going to sign for you to go into the delayed enlistment program, which means if you're a senior in high school, you can enlist now. And then after you graduate from high school, into the Navy you go. And that's what I wanted to do. And I was so, so, so excited. So my birthday fell on a Sunday. So that Monday, I went down to the recruiting office in downtown Detroit, Michigan. I'll never forget the address, 231 West Lafayette Street. And I walked into the federal building where all the recruiters were. And it was a long, narrow hallway that had all the recruiters. And down at the end of the hallway, I saw this guy in a Navy uniform. The Navy recruiter. I made a beeline down to the office. And as I walked in, he's on the telephone. And so he says, have a seat. I'll be right with you. So as I get ready to sit down, I realized I walked into the wrong.
I'm getting chills already. Go. Keep going. I'm liking it.
The wrong recruiting office. Back then, the Coast Guard uniform was the same as the Navy uniform. So what happened was I just saw this guy in a Navy uniform. I walked in, didn't look at the sign on the door, didn't look at anything. But then when I walked into the office and then I saw pictures of ships that were white and said Coast Guard on it, I realized I walked into the wrong office. Now, I knew about the Coast Guard, so it wasn't like I didn't know anything about the Coast Guard, but my excitement of wanting to join the Navy that day just so overwhelmed that I paid no attention beyond seeing a guy in a blue Navy uniform, and that was it. Well, he's on the phone and he's talking, and I'm too nervous to sit down, so I wander around the office. I I look at the pictures, I look at things that were hanging on the wall, and I come across a a unit commendation that was hanging on the wall. It was of a 1952 rescue that the Coast Guard was involved in off the coast of Cape Cod, where a 36-foot motor surf boat went out in heavy seas in a nor'easter, a crew of 4, to rescue 28 people off of a freighter that broke in half. And when I read this, I said, wow. And the recruiter stopped his phone call, looked at me, and said, I guarantee you'll do something like that in your first 4 years in the Coast Guard. That's where I joined the Coast Guard. Wow. So to get to your part of your other question is, so when I get home, I got all this Coast Guard recruiting literature and everything, and I'm excited about joining the Coast Guard. I walked in, my father says, where were you? I called the Navy recruiter looking for you. And I said, oh, Dad, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to join the Coast Guard. And I'm thinking he's going to be just as excited because, heck, for 7 years, all I talked about was joining the Navy, and I'm going in the Coast Guard instead. It's no different, right? Well, he wasn't happy about it.
Wow.
And I didn't know why he wasn't happy until he started explaining certain things to me. He said, he took me into the dining room, because in the dining room, in the china cabinet drawer, he had his stuff drawer. And he pulls out a road atlas, opens it up, takes me to the state of Maine, and he starts pointing out little towns in Maine: Booth Bay Harbor, Portland, and then he goes to Oregon, and he shows me little towns along the coast, and then he goes to Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Anyway, he's rattling out all these little towns, and which I'm confused. And he says, son, you can be stationed in one of those places. And I thought that was pretty cool. But then he says, but son, there are no black people in these places I'm showing you. So if you join the Coast Guard, you are going to be in a place like this, and there aren't very many black people in the Coast Guard. You may want to rethink this going into the Navy. He says, and he said, look, I'll support you, but you talked about the Navy. You made a very hasty decision, and you really don't know a lot about the Coast Guard you think you do. Well, my mother overhears this conversation, comes in the room, goes to my father, and just yells at him, says, you don't tell him that, and she says, things are never going to change unless you become part of the change. And so it was my mother that said, we're going to support you no matter what. If this is what you want to do, you go in the Coast Guard and you do well. And I kind of understood that point that, I guess I am going into a branch of service that there are very few minorities of any type, particularly back in the 70s. We're talking the 70s, the numbers were way a lot lower than they ever were up till now, but or opportunities that were available. But I chose to go in the Coast Guard knowing that up front.
Yeah, I love that story. And I love what your mother said. That is outstanding. That's, we should all aspire to live that way, right? So you see something that wants to be changed, you want change, then you need to be that change.
You need to change.
We've heard that over and over again. That's outstanding advice. I love the whole accidental coastie thing, though. That's outstanding, right? Accidental coastie that raised the ceiling and changed things in the Coast Guard. That's pretty cool.
Well, and to take my story a little bit further, because, what got me in the Coast Guard was about imagination, because when I walked into that Coast Guard recruiting office, I had every reason to leave and go find the Navy recruiter because the Coast Guard just wasn't on my radar. And, but it was reading that citation of that rescue, which Disney actually made a movie out of it, which the movie is called The Finest Hours, and I recommend
amazing movie
that if you ever want to watch a great movie, and it's very true, because it's just so unbelievable, but it was a true story. But it was reading that citation that I had imagination, because it didn't take the recruiter to say, I guarantee you in your first 4 years you'll do something like that. I read this citation and I saw me in it. So it was imagination that sort of got me going. And there's imagination in a lot of things of what I've accomplished, because I kind of have this vision about things I like to see or what I like to do or like to be. And then I put my head to it, and then off I go.
Yeah. And it's not an easy thing. I'm because I also grew up in the Coast Guard. I know what it means to, as you move up, and the particular challenges, and it's very different today, but it still exists. It's just not as pronounced as it was. But you were coming up in an organization that, for whatever reason, culturally there weren't a lot of African Americans, and I know for a fact that African Americans were not being stationed at certain places just because of the cultural differences.
Right.
But you fought through that, and not only that, but you had to counsel more junior enlisted members as you advanced through the ranks on how to survive and how to be, and you weren't a victim, and all of these things that can be so prevalent that people can say, I was dealt a bad hand of cards. This is not fair. This isn't the way that it's supposed to be. And they just sort of fold in and they give up. You didn't do that. You kept fighting the fight and fighting the fight. And
I use the word imagination because that's really what drove my train. That's what makes me tick. And as I tell you the story how I came into the Coast Guard, and to respond to, just as you just mentioned about, I just never gave up, and there was never a no for me, regardless of what the barriers were. Barriers were made for me to climb over, go under, or go through, whatever it took to get that. But it was all because of imagination, because I always saw something that I think I could do, no matter how amazingly uh, crazy it would have been. And case in point, here I am 2 weeks in the boot camp, 2 weeks in the boot camp in the Coast Guard. And I tell my drill instructor, my company commander, that I want to be Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard. Now, you know how crazy that is?
Yes, I do.
Brian, you're a Marine.
Oh
Imagine you
my!
spend 2 weeks in the boot camp and you go up to your sergeant and you tell them that you're going to be the sergeant major in the Marine Corps. You can only imagine how your drill instructor
I'd still be doing push-ups and bends and thrusts, man.
Well, that's what I had to do. I mean, because of course my drill instructor, he thought I was a smartass for saying that and then cocky, but I was dead serious. And now, why did that come about? I saw a picture of the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and once again, imagination set in. I looked at that picture. I thought, first of all, it was pretty cool, and then I actually asked my company commander, "Who is he?" Because the position was very new at the time, that we didn't have it in our Coast Guardsman's manual. So he said to me in a real rough, gruff voice that those Chief Bosun made say, he said, "That's the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard." And he's got his finger pointed at me as he's saying that. And of course, Seaman Recruit Patton, being as innocent as he ever could be, asked the next question, what does he do? And then he's irritated because I asked two questions. He says, he tells the commandant what to do. Now, that turned my bell on.
Okay.
He tells the commandant what to do? This enlisted guy does that? Oh, hell yeah, I want that job. And yeah, I was dead serious. And of course, he marched me out to the parade field, or the grinder as we called it, and made me do 50 push-ups in the heat of the sun in June down in Cape May, New Jersey. But I had no idea why I had to do the 50 push-ups, but I did it. And then when I snapped back to attention, he gets back into my face and he says, "The day you become the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, that's the day I'll walk on clouds." Well, he was right, because he died 2 years before I became Master Chief of the Coast Guard.
He was walking on cloud. There you go.
You got a head start. That's funny.
Wow. That is a phenomenal story. I love that.
So I want to say something in response to a comment you made earlier about fighting the fight, and just listening to you, Vince. I don't really think that you saw it as a fight. I think it was more about responding to your desire for creativity and imagination and doing something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I did not see it as a fight. That I claw my way, going to the top, doing the kinds of things. Well, yeah, I guess when you look back at it, that I did extra things that I didn't have to do, and my success. I did it partly because I wanted to. I did it partly because I was dead serious about, I wanted to get to the top, and I knew that to get there, only a few people can make it up to that level. And I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be understood that I could do those things. So yeah, that's kind of clawing your way up. But I'm not so sure I could really define fight, because you're absolutely right. I had a strong-willed desire, and it goes back to when I told you our first story of getting over my stuttering. That right there, that turned me into a monster, because I was a kid that thought I would never, ever get away from stuttering, and I did it. And then when that happened, I was
do anything.
Right. What else could I do? Anything I want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's cool though that you put that out there so early on. That's talk about setting your mind in motion, right? And putting your order in with the universe. And it turned out just fine. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it actually reminds me of the great quote, which I've used many times on our podcast, and I'll use it one more time, from Thomas Edison, who said, "If we do the things that we are actually capable of doing, we would astound ourselves." And there you go. There you go. You put that out there. You started manifesting it, and you woke up one day and you were Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Whole,
Well, and I'll go one up on you on a famous favorite quote of mine that I actually picked up in 1979. I was in the dentist office waiting to get my teeth cleaned, and I picked up a Life magazine, and there was an article, a very interesting article, an interview on the greatest soccer player of all time, Pele.
yeah,
And I was reading this article, and the question was asked to Pele, well, how do you define your success? How did you get to where you are? And the way the question was worded was in a manner that he kind of stumbled into it. Pele said, success is no accident. It is hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, but most of all, love of what you're doing or learning to do. And I hung on to that quote since 1979. You've got to love what you're doing. So, getting back to Brian's comment about the not having to fight, when I absorb this loving of what I'm doing, first of all, work has never been hard because I love it.
yeah,
And the climb to success, no, arguably, I don't think it was very hard because I loved what I was doing along the way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that worked.
So I had a premonition. This is back to Governor's Island. This is a conversation you will not remember. I was replaying as I was thinking about this podcast. I was replaying some of our early interactions that I could remember. And actually, we were standing outside the land area building, and I was asking you about some stuff that was going on in the ships because I was supporting the ships from the personnel
Right.
side. I had just rotated off of one of the ships, and I was now in a personnel support role in AOF. Doing that, and I was asking you about some of the issues that were going on that were going on in the cutters, where I felt like they weren't being handled well by the ship, and they weren't getting the right. And I remember asking you about it, and basically, you didn't use these words, but what they need to be told is basically, what is it? Suck it up, Buttercup. Life is hard. You're at sea. That's the way it is. No, you're not going to get all the things just the way you want them. Suck it up, Buttercup. And I thought, okay, here's a guy who is willing to tell people what it is that you got to do. I mean, life at sea can be hard. You're away from home. You're working around the clock, especially when there's something big going on. I mean, I remember when I was ops in Harry Lane, we were doing Haitian mass migration interdiction operations, and it was. I mean, I would go for 2 weeks at a time and get like 1 to 2 hours of sleep. There's just, and that's the way it is.
Right.
And people just can't relate to that. It's hard. It's hard work, and you weren't feeling any love for somebody who was wanting to wimp out, and I love that. I really did. It's
Well, my method of doing that, and I wasn't, brittle with telling them to suck it up. The way
Right.
I told them how to suck it up was I had to get them to understand why they were there and how important they needed to be there to do the things that they did. So it really came down to sort of getting everybody to understand their individuality of their mission, of what they have to do, that this ship ain't going to function effectively without you. And when you got them to understand that, then the suck it up part kind of came a little bit more naturally because then they felt important. And that was the important thing that I want to do. Got to make them feel important and be honest about it. Because, you try to BS them into it. You know as well as I do, you can't do that to a coastie or a sailor or a marine, anybody like that. You got to put some factual data to it. And so factual data always came down to when I visited those units and I talked about their mission, I was quick to respond to the successes of what they had to do. I was quick to respond to the fact that from the guy that handled the tie down crew of the helos coming in to land on the deck out in the middle of nowhere and it's bouncing around and so forth to the guys down in the engine room. It's got to clean out the bilges, or when the toilet system backs up, that one brave soul goes in to find out why it's backed up to fix it and so forth. When you got to get them to understand that, listen, you're important, and it's so important for you to do what you have to do. in order to make this a successful journey, to make this a success for you in life. And all of these troubles, all these trials and tribulations that you are going through, you know, mark this down because your success will grow as a result of it. And that's kind of how I did that with explaining about how to suck it up.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great response. I love that. There's so many takeaways for everybody on that. Let me fast forward to a few weeks ago or a couple months ago when you were selected as the Grand Marshal. I don't know. I'm assuming that you don't have either of your parents alive today. Is that true?
No.
You don't.
Yeah, they're gone. Exactly.
But imagine what they're thinking as they look down from on high. On not only did you wake up one day and find out you were Master Chief Petty Officer Coast Guard, you woke up one day. This is a big deal. I mean, I've watched that parade so many times.
I have too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're the man, especially having lived on Governor's Island because you get so connected to the city with all that stuff. And yeah, tell me about that.
Well, first off, I got an email, and you know I get emails from crown princes in one of the African countries that tells me I got a couple $1 million, and so this email, I actually treated it like it was one of those fraud things coming in because I saw it and I said, okay. So the first thing I thought about, all right, who's punking me? You know, I said, you know, so I said, okay, I'm gonna get even when instead of hitting the delete key right away, and I'm sure sooner or later the guy would have called me, but you know, but I says I'm gonna call this number on this and find out who it is. So I'm gonna play along. So I called the number. The guy who sent the email answers the phone, and I'm playing along with it and so forth. And then all of a sudden I started realizing, oh shit, this thing is for real.
This is legit.
So I was, you know, I nearly fainted. Honest to God. I mean that, you know, like when I became Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, you kind of worked your way up to it. There's a process that you go through, so you know you're going to get an answer one way or the other in the end. So there was no real big surprise other than did you get selected or not. This was out of nowhere. There was nobody that told me that they put me in for it or anything like that. And then I know this Veterans Day parade is like the holy grail of veterans parades in the country.
Right.
You know, having watched a few of them when we were on Governor's Island.
Right.
And so to have this out of the blue and I got picked and, you know, and years after I've retired, and I mean, I'm still actively involved in doing things. So I'm kind of still out there in the picture and so forth that people see it, but nowhere to the extent that I thought I was out there that somebody was going to pick me to be the Grand Marshal for the country's, it may be the world's largest veterans parade for all I know, but it's a huge deal. And like you said, to be the Grand Marshal, that's, I mean, people before me wore 4 big stars and were former heads of states or whatever the case may be. And no, not this kid from Detroit, Michigan.
Are you practicing your wave?
Well, as a matter of fact, I am. You know, you learn everything on YouTube. And what I found out, there are tons and tons of explanations on how to wave in a parade. So I've picked my best YouTube video, and I'm working on my wave.
You are. Is that it? Is that it right there? Where you showed us?
Yep. You got to have palm open for the guy. You know, palm open and fingers stretched out as you wave, because that's the symbol of how friendly you are, welcoming and stuff like that. That's what this one lady that did the video told me. I don't know if that's true or not, but
wow, we just got the scoop.
Yeah, no, I could see that from a body language expert, probably, right?
Yeah. I think she was some kind of body language expert because the one that, like, they call it the royal wave, the Queen's wave, it's kind of like, you know, you keep your fingers together and your palms kind of open, you're kind of waving and so forth. Yeah, that's the way the ladies are supposed to wave.
Okay.
The guys, you got to have your hands out. You know, so I said, okay.
That's pretty cool. I don't think we've had a lesson like that on any of our podcasts to date.
That's some wisdom of the ages right there.
Yes, indeed.
There you go. Yeah. So when you guys get selected for whatever parade you're going to be in, because I got to believe your podcast is so doggone awesome that somebody's going to want you in a parade, you know, you got your wave down.
All right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I wanted to make another comment though. I thought of this when you said I retired a while. I retired a while ago, and I know that. But what you've also chosen to do with your time since you retired is continue to, as I say, put yourself back in the arena and engage with the world in so many different ways. And that is where, for me, the word servant came up when I initially introduced you. You serve on a number of boards. I don't know if I told you, Bryant. Vince and I served together on the National Coast Guard Museum Association board as well, which has been a fun
Yeah,
ride.
I don't know if you told me that or I've read that somewhere, but yes, I knew that.
Okay. But I mean, that's just one of several. And so you are continuing to do it. You are continuing to give back, to pay back. And I don't know what's going on in your imagination now in terms of where you might be headed, but this is what I would encourage you to do. Don't stop. Keep going. Remarkable things happen when you just keep going.
Well, I think I told you the reason why I keep going as I'm doing it, and that's it. You know, owe it to or blame it on Pele. You know, because love of what you're doing, and I've embraced that so much, and find that to be just the best way to run life is love what you do, and and I've had challenges in my life. Gone through a couple of divorces, and I mean, we all have had some kind of hiccups in our lives and so forth. But life's just too short to just sit there and say, "Woe is me," and stand or sit by the curb crying and feeling bad about yourself and so forth. So I love what I do, and therefore I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing, and that keeps me happy. So yeah, it won't stop.
It don't matter who you are. Everybody has their shit, and we
Right.
talk about it all the time. There's just everybody has it, and you're right. Some people allow it to destroy them. And they become a heap on the ground. They're
Right.
just surviving.
Yep.
And that's a hell of a way to live your life.
Kevin, say those four things again, right? So you said servant, leader, friend. What was the
colleague?
Colleague.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I was listening to that when you said it, and just think about that, folks that are listening. What would people describe you as? Would they use any of those terms to describe you, or other similar favorable terms, right? Compliments, or would they have not so good things to say about you? And again, I'm not saying this because it's important for you to worry what everybody thinks about you. And at the same time, I think people that you certainly people that you're close to and you respect and you love and so on, it's important to understand what they would say about you.
You betcha. That's that whole what do you want on your tombstone kind of thought and conversation. And I think you're right. You can't go through life worrying what everybody thinks about you. But on the other hand, if you project, if you have that imagination that Vince was talking about who am I?
Right. Who do you want to be perceived as? What would you want people to describe you as? And are you living a life consistent with that?
Yeah.
Well, and to interject this part of the conversation here is that part of that in terms of how do you want to live your life is first and foremost, and I'm big on this, is that everyone should learn, understand, practice, and live their own personal core values. We have ethical core values that have been placed before us, be it from what the companies that we work for, or the organizations that we serve with, or you name it. But there are personal core values within ourselves. This is the true thing about what makes us tick. But we got to understand what makes us tick. And so we all have personal core values. And I think if we take the time and understand and build our personal core values and live by them, then everything falls into place. My personal core values, which probably is no surprise based on what I've told you about me so far, and what Kevin, of course, knows, is three words: people, passion, and performance. And I didn't sit down and come up with these three things because these are cool, I'm gonna do that. I kind of rolled into it, because the whole people thing is very important. I mean, being engaged with working with people, understanding people, and then the other part of the people, not just for me being engaged, with them, but also to sort of play vampire and suck the life out of some people that you find has got some very valuable information and things that can help you along the way. So that's how that people part became so important to me. And my passion part, there's the Pele part. Love what you're doing, have the enthusiasm about your life, have the enthusiasm about putting your effort into anything and everything you do, and the imagination part. Because if you don't have passion, you are not going to be either not just successful in things of where you're going to go, but you're gonna you're gonna live this slob life of just being angry at yourself, or just don't know what you're being angry with.
Yeah.
And then performance is quite simply put is prepare well so you can perform well.
Yeah.
Always prepare well, regardless of how much education that you seek or have. And it doesn't have to be formal academic education. Is education within that school of hard knocks, the knowledge part, getting yourself to understand different kinds of things that you don't know how things work, learn how to make it work. But people, passion, and performance, that's me. And that's what drives my train. And that is what makes me tick.
Yeah.
Love it.
You could do a whole podcast just on those 3 words, honestly, and maybe we will actually. Just to talk about each one of them. We can't. I can't add anything to that because just the way you presented it, honestly, and the way that it came across, I'm sitting here going, "Whew, man, it's good stuff. I'm liking this." Yeah. So this is very well done.
Yeah. I was having an experience like I'm not even part of this podcast.
Right.
I'm a student in the school of life. Listening to that explanation, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Very cool. I want to. You might have seen me taking notes here. I like to do that, and I like to bring back. But there's some real highlights that It's one of the things that is just important for me to carry, and I want to repeat them back to you, just so you know. So things to me that have really resonated, and I think, and I'm doing this for the benefit of our audience as well. If you want change, you be the change. You become part of the change. I love that point that you made. I love the story you told about your parents, and that, and the impact that they had on you, the impact of your mother, the impact of your father, and both in very different ways. I mean, your father's the one that sort of planted that seed about you can get over the stuttering piece of it, and your mother was like, hey, don't be treating him like that. Don't be managing his expectations that way. Imagine.
Well, and the father thing, right? The cool thing about the way he did that was it wasn't, like a disciplinary thing. It's it was a confidence building learning experience without you even realizing why you were doing it.
Exactly. That's right.
That's very cool.
The whole thing about imagination.
That's wisdom there, right?
That's wisdom, serious wisdom. I love the imagination piece, Vince. The whole thing about putting it out there and then just walking toward that future imaginated vision that you put out there is so incredibly powerful, and you've lived that. Success is no accident. Pele, you gotta mostly love what you were doing. That's love what you're up to, and that'll keep you going. I put down you're still even to this day putting yourself in the arena, so that you're where the action is, even in your retired state. Live your own personal core values, and people, passion, performance. Man, we're just getting started, right?
You guys wanted wisdom. I gave you some wisdom.
You gave us some wisdom.
And we know there's lots more where that came from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. Because I love the change piece. And I love that you called out your older brother and how, you were watching what he was doing and, really kind of setting your, you got somebody to look up to, right? You got somebody that's in that mentor category for you in your life. I think that's important. The imagination piece is huge, right? And you putting it out there that you wanted to be the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard. You didn't know it wasn't so, because why would you think that, right? It's a new role, so new. This stuff it hadn't even been printed in your manuals yet, it's And I love that you put it out there. You declared it, right? And I think that's one of the things that people fall short sometimes is, they'll want to do something and they keep it to themselves. I think there's power in putting it out there because then, what you're doing in my mind is you're creating these accountability partners potentially because, you've said to somebody out loud, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to become. And, I think that helps to make it so.
And Brian, and I had some very good people, good mentors along the way. They were concerned about me saying that, that I not feel cocky, and I was glad that they made those comments because then the comments made after that, well, what happens if you don't get picked? And then my answer was always, well, heck, as I look back, look at all the things I have done, and in pursuit of this. So it's
Right.
all it's, nothing's lost.
Right. You have to at least be a Master Chief Petty Officer to even be in
Yeah,
contention.
exactly.
And that's an accomplishment in and of itself.
That I worked on my education. I did all kinds of stuff that, if I didn't get there, my God, there was a whole bunch of other stuff that I did pretty good that I would not have walked away upset.
Yeah, see, that's also a great piece of the story. Is you're right. There are so many things that you picked up along the way in pursuit of this imagination that you put out there, and you're right. It could have taken any number of turns, and it would have turned out just fine.
And the reason I call that out about saying it and not being afraid to own that is, I watched another podcast that you've been on, and you actually shared a story about saying it to someone who there was another person present that thought that wasn't such a good idea, and later because you had said that, something pretty amazing happened and an opportunity created itself. So can you share that story?
Oh gosh, let's see.
So you were in Chicago and in a car.
Oh yes. Okay, let me share that story because this is pretty amazing. So I'm in Chicago. I'm on recruiting duty, and one of the things that we recruiters had to do every now and then was to sort of be the chauffeur for any bigwig that flew into Chicago. The Coast Guard Great Lakes region headquarters was in Cleveland, so every once in a while the bigwigs would come out to Chicago for fill in the blank. So the two-star admiral, who was the district commander in Cleveland for the whole Great Lakes region, he flew to Chicago to attend an event he had to speak at. So I was his designated driver. So I had to go pick him up at O'Hare Airport. My chief, who was the head of the recruiting office, went with me. He wanted to meet the admiral, and my chief, Rich Loncar, proud of me. This guy did all kinds of things to help me along the way. Anyway, we were in the car and we're driving to downtown Chicago and the usual Chicago rush hour time frame. So you try to make little talk. So Chief Loncar, he speaks up first and he says to the admiral, he says, Admiral, Petty Officer Patton, and I was an E5 then. Petty Officer Patton is working on his master's degree. And the admiral sitting in his back seat, he says, you are? I says, yes, sir. And then he says, well, that's great. Well, when are you going to officer candidate school? And then I quickly said, I'm not, sir. And he said, why not? And then my answer was, well, I want to be Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard someday. And the admiral sitting in the back seat, got quiet, said absolutely nothing. My chief, who was sitting next to me up in the front seat, he hit me in the side. And after we let the admiral had nothing to say to me after that. Nothing.
Oh,
we got to the McCormick place where we had to take him to. You get out, do the protocol, open the door for him, and all that. And he had a pipe, and he kind of like humped and walked off. And so my chief said after that, he says, "Look what you did. The admiral's pissed off at you. You said about wanting to be Master Chief of the Coast Guard, and he thought you were being a smart ass." I said, "Well, you asked me. I told him the truth." He said, "Listen, I know you want to be. I believe in you." And this is what the chief said: "I believe in you, but you're gonna have to not tell people that because I don't think they get it. I don't think they really understand you." I said, "Okay." So I kind of let it go. Fast forward 2 years, I leave recruiting duty and I get transferred to Cleveland, and and the admiral there is gone. So I'm in Cleveland for about roughly 9 or 10 months in Cleveland. And I come in the office one morning, and my commander, who was the chief of personnel, says, Patton, come into my office. And okay, I walked into the office, and I says, yes, Commander, what can I do for you? He says, have a seat at my desk. I says, at your desk, sir? He says, yeah, I think you want to be comfortable because you're going to get a phone call, and I want you to take the call at my desk. And I says, who's it from? Oh, you'll know when he calls. I said, all right. So anyway, phone rings. He says, that's for you. And I answer it, and the guy on the other end of the phone says, is this the Patton I met in Chicago a couple years ago? And I says, yes, sir. Who's this? He says, this is Admiral Gracie, who is the Commandant of the Coast Guard. And at the time when I met him, he was the 9th District Commander a few years back. So he said, this is Admiral Gracie. I says, oh, yes, sir. So now I'm thinking, I mean, did this guy wait 2 years to call me and yell at me? I didn't know what's going on. And he said to me, he says, well, did you get your master's degree? I said, yes, sir, I did. He says, oh, good. He says, I got a job for you. And I said, sir? He says, yeah. He said, you still want to be Master Chief of the Coast Guard someday? I said, yes, sir. And then I'm thinking, well, wow, is he going to make me Master Chief of the Coast Guard?
Were you an E5 or E6? What were you?
I was an E6 then, so that would have been a big leap if he did that. He said, and I didn't. Thank God I didn't ask him the question. That would have been really embarrassing. And he says, and he just became commandant. He says, I want to change the officer and the enlisted evaluation system. And we picked an officer to work on this project, and I want an enlisted person to work on the enlisted system. And what we do is we send you off to school to get your master's or your doctorate degree. And since you got your master's already, we'll send you off to get your doctorate degree. Your dissertation will be on the development and implementation of the Coast Guard enlisted evaluation system. As the case of the officer, he was doing the same thing for the officer system. So anyway, they packed me up and moved me here to Washington, D.C., and I got enrolled in American University, and that's how I got my doctorate. So, it's like it happened,
And that was Admiral Gracie. You know what? I know a lot about you. I did not know that story.
Isn't that cool, right?
Cool story.
So don't be afraid to put it out there, because you never know
That's
who's
right.
going to hear it that might actually help you get there.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And Kevin can tell you a lot of stories about Admiral Gracie itself. That's because as I tell the story, people say, yep, that's something Gracie would do. Because this was bold, because so we're talking 1982. Okay. So we're talking at a period of time where the Commandant of the Coast, the Commandant of the Coast Guard, he becomes the new Commandant of the Coast Guard. But more importantly, only officers went to postgraduate school.
Right.
The people didn't go.
Right.
And I was the first enlisted person in all of the military, not just the Coast Guard, that was selected into a postgraduate school program. And there were no rules. No rules written on how that was to be done. In fact, I was told, in fact, Kevin, you probably know this guy too, Admiral Jerry Woolover.
Yeah.
Who was the project officer. He was a commander at the time. He was the project officer at the time. And he told me a lot of the backstory. He says, your name came down, and for you to go to this program, and the first thing everybody did was say, he can't go, he's an enlisted guy. And then Woolover said, well, you go down and tell the Commandant.
Right. Tell the Commandant he can't go. Right. Wow.
But the Admiral just said, make it so, and that's it. So, and I asked the Admiral after that later, I says, were you mad at me when I told you I wanted to be Master Chief of the Coast? He said, no, I was actually speechless. He said,
wow.
Speechless. I wish I had something to say beyond that. And all that was going through my head was, well, that's kind of an odd comment. And he says, only one person gets picked for that. And he wanted to have that conversation with me, but he felt that if he talked about it, that it wasn't going to come out right. So instead, he just stayed quiet.
That's good judgment.
His wheels were turning.
Yeah.
His wheels were turning.
The seed was planted.
Well, yeah, the seed was planted, so planted that when he became commandant, he never forgot me, and he just said, "Okay, all right, I got some crackerjack guy out there that thinks he can make it work." So, have at it.
You know what I love about this story also is that you said at the very beginning, I think within the first 2 minutes, that the importance of the people along the way that have
Yes.
helped you do it. You know, we
Yes.
don't live our lives as islands. If we do, you know, we're still on the bottom rung. And if you don't, just like you said, so many, all of us, anybody who had any kind of success in life, there's always people there that have stepped up when they needed to. And boy, you got that.
Well, as the old African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child.
There you
And
go.
I got
Amen.
one hell of a village.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm going to ask you right now. We'd love to have you back as maybe kind of a recurring guest. And
Sure.
what we can do, Brian, I'm looking at Brian because I want to get his nod over here. Instead of just a general open conversation, now that our audience knows who you are, we could maybe focus on specific topics. From
Yeah,
time to
absolutely.
time. Is that-
Yeah, I love the idea.
Oh, I'd love to do it.
The conversation tonight has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I know it can only go, you know, I don't even know where it can go. The possibilities are endless.
Right.
Well, call on me anytime. I'll be happy to do it. You know, I'll be happy to do it.
You bet. You bet. It's getting dark here, isn't it? You went from bright and sunny to things are darkening behind you. You're in your room.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife made a comment about that the other night. She's like, it happened so fast. How, you know, all of a sudden, you know, it's getting dark earlier. And, you know, of course, I made some wise comment like, you know, gosh, it almost seems like this happens every year.
Right. Right. Vince, it's been wonderful. Thank you for your time. I know there's so much more to you, and like we're just scratching the surface, but this has been wonderful. I think, you know, we have a smart audience who is always looking for really good tips to just take away so that they can improve their own lives. And boy, we got shovels full of that today.
Indeed.
And we appreciate you giving us the time to do this. And
Anytime.
all right.
All right.
You guys, it's great. To your listeners out there, these guys are cool. I mean, I'm looking at them through Zoom, but here they are. You know, they're sitting on the porch and watching the cars go by on the road. You know, and you know, Brian's got his beer sitting there. You know, and Kevin, you got his water. At least he says it's water. But these guys look pretty doggone comfortable that you can't help but talk to them and listen to them. So thank you so much for allowing me onto your porch there. So.
Ooh, that's a good line.
Yeah,
You're
you are
welcome.
certainly welcome. I appreciate your kind words.
You bet.
All right, we ready to wrap this up?
I think we're ready to wrap it.
I got to do that thing.
You got to do that thing.
All right, here we go.
All right.
And then do this thing.
Yes.
No matter who you are, where you are, and what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.